everyone. I thought we played with great effort on Saturday. The first half kind of played out how we imagined it to play, but we didn't execute the game plan in the second half in order to win the game. Some positives offensively, we won between the snaps. We had great communication. The crowd noise wasn't a factor for the game. We had 2 red zone scoring touchdowns. Obviously, the second one was, we capitalized off a turnover from the defense. Opportunities for growth, up front. We have to continue to strain in our blocking in the run game. The second half, that became an issue. And then also pass protection was an issue in the second half as well. And then, obviously, pushing the pass game down the field. Defensively, positives were, I thought the defensive line really played stout. For the most part, they were good in the run game. They put a lot of pressure on the quarterback, 15 pressures. And then we also set up a score right before the half. Opportunities for growth. The ball continuously went over our head. That was a point of emphasis that it couldn't happen, and it did. And then, we didn't actually get home to get any sacks as well. Special teams, we were penalty-free. Gabe had a tremendous day flipping the field. And then we eliminated their kick return team with some touchbacks. Opportunities for growth, we continue to have some decision-making issues with the return guys on the kick return. We have a great opportunity this week to play a great Indiana team. Kirk Signetti is a friend of mine. He reached out to me when all of this went down, so I'm appreciative to him. He's a Pittsburgh guy, and we go way back from, his dad being a coach at IUP, and I know the whole family, so it's a great relationship, and just looking forward to being home at Beaver Stadium in front of our fans.
Our first question from Zoom is Rich Garcella.
Thanks, Greg. Good afternoon, Terry. How are you?
Good, thanks. How you doing, Rich?
I'm good. You mentioned the defensive line. On the game sheet that we got, that there was only one quarterback hurry. So I know you said you mentioned all the pressures, but 14 sacks in 8 games compared to 44 and 16 last year. Why do you think you haven't been able to get a consistent pass rush this season?
Yeah, there's a couple different reasons. It's a completely different defense. This defense is more gap control. Last year's defense was more vertical push up the field. It's just a different philosophy. Another reason is we don't have Abdul Carter as well. That's a major factor. And so, we felt like we got a lot more pressure this weekend. We have to continue to develop that. And get more pressure on the quarterback.
Let's go to Bob Flounders and then Frank Bodani. You're on deck.
Hi, Terry. How you doing?
Good, Bob. How you doing?
I'm good, Terry. Terry, you talked about it in your opening statement, and you talked about it after the game. The Ohio State wideouts just had a monstrous day. You called them maybe the 2 best wideouts that have ever come out of Ohio State. You also mentioned the pass rush has to help as well. But you really, built this corner room. You've been developing it for years, and you talked about the ball going over their heads consistently. Why do you think that happened when you made it such a point of emphasis? And how are you going to try and approach fixing that with an offense like Indiana and their passing game coming to town?
Yeah, we definitely got to get it fixed this week. These guys, these 2 receivers that they have at Indiana have more touchdowns than the Ohio State guys. So it doesn't get any easier. Very similar in their style and approach with RPO, play action, take a shot. It's my job to get back more involved with the corner room, to make more points of emphasis that, I think one of the reasons it happened is our guys, the style of play that they play, they were sitting on routes a little bit too much. Some will say a lack of respect for who their opponent was. But when you play guys that can run routes and have speed like these guys, you have to get more into your pedal and stay on top of receivers, and we have to make sure we make a point of emphasis of just staying on top of those guys.
Let's go to Frank Bodani, followed by Mike Gross.
Hi, Terry. Good afternoon to you.
Hey, Frank.
Hi. As far as you mentioned being able to push the ball down the field a little bit with the pass game, how at this point in the season, what kind of changes can you hope to make to help that? We were thinking, we were the young wide receivers, but Kobe Howard, Tyseer Denmark, they didn't play a whole lot again on Saturday. Is there some changes with personnel you think could help, or what, especially with the receivers, what can help at this point?
Yeah, we're continuing to examine that. You almost sound like a broken record, right? We keep saying that. It's my job to make sure it gets changed. It will get changed this week. I'm talking with the offensive staff. We're going to push the ball a little bit further down the field. Obviously the stat that's running around is, we had, I guess, 102 yak yards from the game and 145 or so total, which means the ball is still going horizontally. So, we have to develop the play action. We have to develop the intermediate game, which is that 12 to 18-yard range, and just take more shots there. And then, obviously, you got to take selective 5, 6, 7 shots vertically down the field. So I have to get it fixed. We will throw the ball down the field this week.
Let's go to Mike Gross, followed by Mark Wogenrich.
Hi, Terry. Good afternoon.
Hey, Mike.
Late in the game, Caleb Downs had what looked to me like a pretty violent, dangerous hit on Khalil Dinkins. It's the kind of thing that you would almost expect to see a brawl result from it. So do you think that should have been targeting? And were you surprised that your guys didn't react more, maybe in anger, to that?
The referees get paid to do a job. From our naked eye, it looked like the definition of targeting. In regards to the reaction of it, we play a violent game and hits happen all the time. That's called discipline. We're not going to react to, what type of hit it was. And, you got to line up and play the next snap. Let the referees referee.
Let's go to Mark Wogenrich, followed by Andy Stein.
Hey, Terry, you just talked about, as you said again, we will throw the ball downfield this week. With regard to that, how would you describe or how would you characterize the situation in the quarterback room with Ethan Grunkemeyer essentially being your lone, healthy-ish scholarship quarterback?
Yeah, Ethan continues to grow. I think he's getting better. I thought he was better game 2 than game 1. We have to give him more opportunities. He did miss a dig the one time, I think, to Kyron Hudson that came open there. Those are the type of throws we have to have him make. He also threw a couple third down critical plays. So he's continuing to grow. We just have to give him more opportunity to show and develop.
Let's go to Andy Stein, followed by Ali Barubi.
Thanks, Greg. Hey, Terry. I wanted to ask about the betting rule in pro sports now for college athletes. I know it's on hold right now. How would you advise it with your players, and have you had any conversations with your team about it?
Yeah, the simple conversation was, the rule was supposed to pass this past week, and it's delayed. So obviously, if anyone's thinking of, placing bets, don't do that right now. We just continue to educate these guys on, the pros and cons of things, and if they're choosing to do that, how to go about doing it so it doesn't affect their career.
Last question from Zoom, Ali Barubi.
Hey, Terry, how are you?
Hey, Ali.
I think there's a video going around of Vega helping one of the equipment managers push equipment up the tunnel. And I think about all the adversity you guys have faced in the last couple of weeks. How have you seen your team pull together, and maybe some of those leaders who have stepped up to um, help guide this team through a very difficult chapter here?
Yeah, I am super proud of this team. I'm super proud of the leadership. These guys could have packed it in weeks ago. They could have laid down and quit. They refused to do that. When you see what Vanga did coming up the ramp and to jump across the banister and, help out like that, it's a testimony to the guys that we have here in this locker room. It's a testimony to Penn State, and it's a testimony to the program of how things are run here. So we've got a locker room full of guys like that are willing to do things like that and just do things the right way. And, obviously we're going through, some tough times right now, but doesn't change our character.
We'll go to questions in the room over here on the right. Mark?
The guy who shot that video was a hack, Terry. He's not very good. Hey, you've been around a lot of receivers and a lot of young receivers who have made an impact. We've heard so much about Kobe from players and coaches. What is it that's holding him back from seeing more snaps? What has prevented him from seeing more snaps to this point?
Yeah, the challenge with any young player, especially freshmen, is learning the system completely. We have tons of plays with a ton of different options off of each particular play. So a lot of times with young receivers, they may run routes short or they not quite where they're supposed to be, where the quarterback wants them. So a lot of times the coach doesn't have confidence to put them in because they may make that mental error. But what Kobe does best is he competes. This guy loves football. He got in this week. He got in last week against Iowa, and I think his 2 catches might be the 2 longest catches we've had in both those games. So, we got to get him an opportunity to get out there and shine, and that's my job. And Kobe's going to be on the field on Saturday.
Audrey?
Hey, Terry, how are you?
Hey.
You guys obviously have a ways to go to even be in the conversation with it, but have you as a staff, as the administration, had talks that if this team would make a bowl game, that is it better to not do that, or have you guys had those kinds of conversations?
We haven't as a team, but my mindset is we're trying to win this week, and as we continue to win, why wouldn't we want to play football? This is what we signed up to do. We want to take advantage of every opportunity that's in front of us. Yeah, we clearly would talk with the players as well. And, my feeling based on how they're performing right now, if we win enough games to get to bowl eligibility, I think they would play because they haven't laid down yet.
John?
Hey, Terry, over here on your right. How would you evaluate the job Andy Kotelnicki has done as a play caller in the 2 games you've been head coaching?
Yeah, obviously when you look at statistics, there's always room for improvement. That's what we're having conversations every week about, to how do we improve the pass game? How do we get the ball pushed down the field? I think our perimeter pass game is pretty good. Obviously 102 yak yards. That's a good statistic right there. That's an extension of the run game. But I think obviously I've said before, we have to continue to figure out ways to push the ball down the field, and he's aware of that, and we're making conscious efforts to get that done this week.
Over here on the right, Tyler?
Hey, Terry, thanks for the time. Going back to Kobe and Tyseer to that point, I know last week you said you were looking for them to maybe inject some life into the pass attack. You just stated that you expect to see more of Kobe this week. Was there a disconnect at all in terms of how much those guys actually saw the field versus what your anticipation was in pregame warmups going into the matchup based on your game plan and what you said last week?
No, there's the challenge with how we do things on offense with personnel groups, right? So, there's 50 different personnel groups, and it's certain guys that you want for certain plays. So you just can't plug and play because, once again, to my explanation earlier, the young guys don't know the entire playbook. So you have to be selecting what plays they can handle. And that's the challenge with those guys. So we've got to do a great job of tutoring these guys and giving them some added meeting time to get them caught up to speed so that they're available for more opportunities.
Over here in the back on the right, Max.
Hey, Terry, thanks for doing this. With the fifth straight loss and kind of the uncertainty and everything, have you started the process of kind of recruiting your own roster to stay here potentially in the portal? And when there is so much uncertainty, especially around the coaching staff and even yourself, what do those conversations look like?
Yeah, they're very difficult. The reality is no one knows who's going to be here. When the next head coach is hired, that person can wipe the whole building out. So, we just try to stay grounded, keep our feet on the ground, and be professionals. The young men in the locker room, they deserve that. They're showing up to work every single day. So us as coaches and staff, we have to give our 110% for these guys. And that's what we're going to continue to do and just focus on trying to beat Indiana this week.
Right here in the front, Jack.
Hey, Terry, how you doing?
Hey.
What were your thoughts on Liam Clifford's usage as a gadget player on Saturday, and do you expect that role to continue to evolve, whether in its usage or who is running that kind of play?
Yeah, I thought it gave us a little bit of a spark. It gave a little bit of a different look. I think he caught the 1 third down ball, based on that personnel group. It just gives us some variety. We're going to continue to try to be creative. We're just trying to figure out ways to move the ball down the field.
Over here on the right, Daniel.
Terry, you mentioned Kurt Signetti in your opening statement. Someone who has seen Indiana over the past dozen years with its ups and downs, what has stood out about how he has gotten this program to this point so quickly?
Yeah, he's an outstanding coach. His entire family, they're just all men that have been coaching. He has a methodical approach to things, and he's a player developer. He runs a great program, obviously at JMU and all the places he's been, Elon. I mean, just everywhere he's had success. And, guys buy into the program. And, once you get buy-in and trust, you can do some special things. And that's what he's doing right now. He's got those guys playing as good as anyone in the country. So, I respect everything that he's doing, and he's doing it the right way.
Way in the back, T. Frank.
Hey, Terry. How you doing today?
Good, thanks.
Want to ask you about some of the personnel decisions you did make this past weekend after the bye week. Anthony Donko at right tackle. Alex Tash saw the field, and it seemed like Andrew Rapplier had a bigger part in the offense. And I don't know if that was just game plan specific or if that was a decision, but just what led to those decisions, and then how did you think they played out on Saturday?
Yeah, in regards to Tash, we want to get him more involved. At the linebacker play, we just didn't have enough depth. So we put in a couple personnel packages for him to get on the field more. Thought he did a really good job against Ohio State. And then, with Rap, we just felt like we wanted to go a little bit more bigger bodies. Rap is a big, strong, tough guy. So, wanted to just get him involved a little bit more. And then up front, we do have 6 or 7 guys that we can play up front that we can move around, and just wanted to take advantage of that.
You're on the front left. Mike?
Hi, Terry. Out on the wall, there's a plaque for each year. 1991, they finished third in the country, and one of their captains was Terry Smith. Mm-hmm. What your experience back then, many people thought that Penn State would be in that position heading into this game. What would you take from that team, that program, that chemistry, the intangibles, and inject into this team right now?
Yeah, that team lost 2 games during that season. So it wasn't a perfect season. What I would inject is the finish. We finished that season great. I think we went and won the Fiesta Bowl that year against, I think, Tennessee. But we have to just press forward. Again, I keep making a statement, we're in the storm. we can't run from it. We have to embrace it, and we have to fight it, and the only way we can do it is together. And I feel like our locker room is still together. And sooner or later, this will turn, and this too will pass. So it's a great group of guys in the locker room. I have so much respect for the players and how they're handling this. And we're going to play hard again on Saturday, and we're going to try to do a couple things differently to create a different outcome.
Over here on the left, Joel.
Hey, Terry, thanks for the time. Seems like tight end production this year has been down. Obviously, it's hard to replace Tyler Warren, but leading receiver at this point is Luke with 213 yards this season. Is there a plan to get that room more involved in the passing game this season, or have there been conversations about that?
Yeah, there's been conversations. It's a strong room that we need to get them guys more involved, and that's part of the play action game. The run game has been the best part of what we're doing, and we want to continue to run the football. Nick Singleton got going a little bit on Saturday. Katron's had a good year. It's time to develop some of the play action off of that and, hit those tight ends, just, some crossing routes and things like that. So it is a point of emphasis, and, we got to get the pass game as a whole, those guys included, and going.
Got time for two more questions. Over here on the left, Lyle.
Hey, Terry, you've made it clear at this point you haven't considered, any staff changes or even a change in play calling. What will you need to see in terms of a decline in on-field production to maybe change that?
Yeah, it's not as easy as just saying, hey, I want to make a change, because when you make that change, it's going to flip things upside down again, and your players' camaraderie, their belief, their trust. And you have to have answers. You have to have solutions beyond that. So it's just it's challenging. I am examining that every single day, losing sleep because, I'm just trying to brainstorm how to fix it. With the staff, right now I don't feel it's necessary, but we'll continue to examine it and make the best decision possible.
Got time for one more, Audrey?
Terry, sometimes you have Nick back on kick returns. Other times you're kind of rotating through other guys. Why is that? And is there any consideration to keeping Singleton back there kind of full-time like he used to do?
Yeah, so, Nick is the return guy. He started the game, and that's what we wanted because, if we were going to have returns, we would like to get it in his hands. It's another opportunity for him. But as the game went on, and the way the game played out, we wanted to get some of those younger guys opportunities. Obviously there was 2 kick returns that we kind of made bad decisions, and 2 young guys that we would like to see what they have and their ability. And, sometimes that's what happens with young players.
Thanks, Terry.
Thanks.